Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting, the business meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Tonight, February 1st, 2022, we are meeting in the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. I will ask for a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion to the motion? No. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. We will now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Quail Hollow Elementary Principal Shad DeMille, and then Principal DeMille will give us school highlights from Quail Hollow Elementary.
Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know if I need to put that up there. Just like to thank the board for this opportunity to share a little bit about Quail Hollow. We at Quail Hollow serve about 480 students, kindergarten through fifth grade. We have one supplemental kindergarten, 2 half-day sessions. We have 2 academic behavior classrooms, as well as 3 preschool classrooms, 19 general ed classrooms, and we have a wonderful staff that supports our students. Our staff is filled with adults who love their students and really, truly put those kids first. At Quail Hollow, we have strong academic programs that follow the Canyons District Multi-System Support Framework and produce results and academic gains. We have a community of teachers who implement restorative circles to build positive relationships with students, which creates a caring and safe environment for learning. These are all great things that our teachers and staff do very well. Tonight, I'd just like to share a little bit about what makes Quail Hollow a great place. And in order to do this, I reached out to our PTA and school community council boards, our teachers, and asked even some of our students that question: what is it that makes Quail Hollow great? So I'd just like to share a few of their responses. Some of our students said, the teachers are nice and kids are nice. We have safety patrol and the food is good. Everyone is nice. All teachers are nice and it is fun. Good school supplies. The rules are good and people follow them. We have quality quails. I like my classes. I get to do science projects, art, and field trips. Some of our parents said, Quail Hollow is a great place because of our community. It is a welcoming place where everyone feels accepted and excited to be at school, and that is due to our community, teachers and all the school staff and our families that attend Quail Hollow. Teachers and staff create a sense of community. Parent volunteers come. High expectations and standards are set, and fun traditions and programs. I know that teachers and administrators always have my child's overall well-being, academic, social, emotional, and physical needs in mind whenever they make a decision. Some of the comments from teachers, one indicator that Quail Hollow is a great school is the fact that the board president still comes to volunteer at the school where her children attended. We get a lot of out of bounds requests for students to come, and teachers tend to stay until they retire. Why? Because parents feel heard about their concerns for their children, and teachers and staff feel supported. One of the cool things about Quail Hollow, about the neighborhood school concept, is that many of the students' parents went to Quail Hollow. A couple decades later, Quail Hollow still delivers a quality education where curiosity and love of learning are encouraged, and nurtured in the same beige building. The teachers and staff are so invested and willing to go the extra mile to see students succeed. They believe in what they do. They believe in what they do, and it shows in their care and attention. Wonderful parents who put in countless hours in the classroom and also serve on PTA and school community council, as well as other committees. All of these are pieces that come together and create this well-working, inviting, and fun environment that makes it a joy to be part of. Now, as you can see from these comments from our teachers and students and parents, that what makes Quail Hollow great is the people that's there. It really does take a village to raise a child, especially in our world today. Our Quail Hollow village includes our parents, teachers, our staff, and most importantly, our students. And when people come together and set aside differences and work together, our school environment is safe, fun, and engaging. And when these things are in place, learning just kind of takes care of itself. There's a lot that goes into gaining an education. While reading, writing, math, and science are all very important, learning to be a learner, learning how to solve problems, and learning to be a good citizen and a good friend are all part of the learning process. At Quail Hollow, we strive for quality in helping kids achieve academically, as well as learn how to be a good person. When good people influence others for good, a community can thrive. So I just like to point out a couple of my perspective about our school, and then I'll be done. One of the things that I've noticed is the positivity and the welcoming environment that's there as soon as you walk through the front doors. Our front staff are stellar people, and we have top-notch teachers. Some of the characteristics that I've seen over the years from our teachers and staff include their kindness, they're very helpful, they're compassionate, they're thoughtful, and they're friendly, and there is an overall feeling of collaboration and togetherness. Our students are kind, they work hard, they're respectful, and they really do strive to succeed. And our parents are very supportive and they're responsive, and they care deeply not only about their own children, but about our community. It's a blessing to be part of Quail Hollow community, and it's all the people involved that really makes us a unique and special place. So thank you.
Thank you. And Quail Hollow is a special place, as all of our schools are, but please, thank you, Principal DeMille, and please extend our appreciation to the staff, the students, and the parents there at the Quail Hollow community.
Thank
we
you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we'll turn time over to Jeff Haney and Kirsten Stewart from the Communications Department for some recognitions.
So President T, the last time I was here, we talked about a fun run. And I went back to the foundation and I told Denise, the foundation director, that President Tingy had asked me if I was going to wear a tutu on the 2-2-22 run to benefit the foundation. And she gave me this. So I'm going to give it to Dr. Robbins. Now, actually, I promised President Tingy that I would wear it, and I will do so as we raise money for Canyon School District. Isn't that lovely? But, you know, President Tingy and the Board of Education, we appreciate the time that you grant us every single board meeting to honor those who have excelled in the arts, either as advocates on the stage, plus a teacher who has gone above and beyond to receive a national certification. Now, those who are honored tonight will receive a letter of commendation from the superintendent and members of the Board of Education. So, but before we do start our recognitions tonight, I do want to remind everyone to don your tutus, much like the one I just showed you, for our 2-2-22 or 2-22-22 run with a tutu. Now, all of the funds raised at this fun run will benefit Canyons District students and schools. Also, it's been a banner year for our Teacher of the Year selection process. As of today, we have received nearly 1,400 nominations for the 2022 Teacher of the Year. We had those nominations from students, parents, principals, and support staff for their favorite teachers. And after Friday, those nominations will then be reviewed by each school selection committee. They will select one Teacher of the Year to represent every school in the Canyons District. From that field, we winnow it down to 3 finalists, a finalist from elementary, middle, and high school levels. From those 3, we select an overall Teacher of the Year. We hope our Teacher of the Year does well and wins the state competition and then heads on to the national competition to take Canyons District to the world. The Canyons Education Foundation is a proud sponsor of the Teacher of the Year awards, and they will be presenting those cash prizes to our Teachers of the Year. So please don your tutus for the 2222 or 22222 fun run. It helps support our Teacher of the Year selection process and ceremony, as well as many other very innovative projects that are funded and supported by the Canyons Education Foundation. Now, our first nominee tonight is Dr. Molly Hart, principal of Albion Middle School. The Utah Music Educators Association has named her the Outstanding Administrator of the Year for the state of Utah. And Dr. Hart will receive this prestigious award at the Music Teacher Association's Professional Development Conference at the Dixie Center in St. George on Friday. Now, this recognition is given to a public school administrator who has demonstrated commitment to the arts, music education in the schools. Now, the nomination may be for long-term support of music education or for a one-time contribution or support of some kind of music education program. But based on the nominations from music educators in the state, the association feels that Dr. Hart truly exemplifies the standards of someone who supports music education in her school. So congratulations to Dr. Hart. This also carries on a tradition in the Canyon School District. Last year, Brighton High Principal Tom Sherwood, and then Jordan High School Principal, and now Federal Programs Director Wendy Dow received the award together from the Utah Music Educators Association. So congratulations to Dr. Hart. Now, our next honorees earned their time in the spotlight with hours and hours and hours of rehearsal. Congratulations to our student musicians from 6 Canyon schools who were named to Utah All-State Ensembles. Now, the All-State High School and Junior High bands, orchestras, and symphonies wowed the crowds at concerts on January 14th and January 15th at Abravanel Hall. It was not easy to win a chair on that stage. The students auditioned in front of judges in order to be named to those performing groups. Suffice to say that these student musicians are among the best of the best in the state. And I know there are a lot of them, but these student musicians deserve their time in the spotlight, not just on the stage, but here at board meeting tonight. The Utah All-State Junior High Band is made up of Adrian McGill from Draper Park, Tate Walker from Draper Park, Sierra Johnson from Draper Park, and Logan Kelly from Draper Park. Utah All-State Junior High Orchestra, Maya Jungere from Draper Park, Benjamin Krantz from Draper Park, Magdalena Morrison, Indian Hills, Hannah Wixom from Albion, Hallie Allen from Brighton. Utah High School All-State Symphonic Band, Tyler Randall from Corner Canyon, Caden Mather from Corner Canyon, Darren Randall from Corner Canyon, and Braden Towns from Corner Canyon, Clark Weiler from Corner Canyon, Avery Winters from Brighton, Christian Sorensen from Brighton, Matthew Wise from Brighton, and Jade Smith from Brighton. The Utah High School All-State Wind Symphony, Yvonne Sun from Brighton, Parker Shepard from Brighton, Isaiah McMullen from Hillcrest, Reed Laker from Corner Canyon. From the Utah State High School All-State Symphonic Orchestra, Hannah Rowley from Brighton, Carolyn Rupper from Brighton, Jade Lamont from Hillcrest, William Buckley from Brighton, and Nola Ripplinger from Brighton. Utah High School All-State Philharmonic Orchestra, Jack Jensen from Alta, Avery Perry from Brighton, Lily Elkhart from Brighton, Zoe Merkley from Brighton, Marcus Morgan from Brighton, Sophia Munn from Hillcrest, Jason Munn from Hillcrest, Colin Carter from Hillcrest, and Ethan Newton from Corner Canyon. Also, the audition results for junior high state band and state orchestra were recently released. There are 30 groups accepted into each, and Canyons is well represented. The state band from Albion, Butler, Draper Park, and Indian Hills, they all earned passage. And the state orchestra, Albion, Butler, Draper Hill, and Indian Hills. So congratulations to the students, the musicians at those schools. Art education, as you can see, is strong in Canyon School District. Our next honoree is a National Board Certified Teacher, Cora Zapata from Alta High School. She will be honored on Friday at the Utah State Capitol. This is a time-honored tradition for those teachers who have earned the National Board Certification. It's a voluntary program, and it's widely regarded as the gold standard in teacher certification, requiring years of work for completion. Now, this standard was established by teachers for teachers, a task force of policymakers, educators, teachers associations, and business leaders combined to create the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards and established 5 core propositions for teaching that form the basis of national board standards. Like I said, if you tune in or head up to the Capitol after 10 o'clock, she'll be honored on the floor of both the House and the Senate. So congratulations to Karina Corasabata from Alta High School for being a National Board Certified Teacher. Now, our next honorees are 2 women who have contributed so much to Canyon School District. Our Special Education Director, Misty Suarez, and a Human HR Director and Recruiter, Kim Baker. Now, we will miss both of their considerable talents considerably when they retire at the end of this school year. Now, Kim, as a recruiter, has crisscrossed the country in search of the best educational talent to bring back to Canyon School District. Now, she hasn't been with us for a long time, but her impact, especially with the amazing teachers that she has brought to Canyons, will be felt for years. And Misty approached the job as the Special Education Director as she does her 100-mile races. She braved the tough spots. She seemingly ran uphill all of the time, but she finished with a smile on her face. American author Lori Borgman got it right, especially about Misty when she said about advocates for children with disabilities. They have the strength of a draft horse while holding on to the delicacy of a daffodil. We will honor Misty and Kim and all of the other retirees of Canyon School District this year at our annual Retirees Banquet on May 12th at Garner's Village. The gathering place, please put it on your calendar if it's not there already. It's a wonderful event to honor those who have contributed so much and so many years to Canyons District students and schools. Now, best of luck to our drill teams. Canyons District High School teams, 4 out of 5 high schools have qualified to compete in the semifinals tomorrow. 5A and 6A competitions will be tomorrow at Utah Valley University. We have the Brighton Acadians, the Corner Canyon Shirelles, the Jordan Charlonians, and Hillcrest Drill, all headed to the semifinals. Hopefully they will all make it to the final round on Saturday. Hillcrest is ranked number 3 in the state in 5A. Fingers crossed for all of our drill teams to head to the finals and hopefully bring back the state championship. So President Tingy, thank you for this time that you've given us during board meeting to recognize those in Canyons District who have gone above and beyond.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. We appreciate hearing all the wonderful things that are happening in the district and the achievements. And we too wish all of those that were recognized tonight the very best and congratulate them. We've now come to the patron comment portion of our meeting. While not required by law, the board often designates time in meetings to listen to the patrons of the district. Patron comment time is limited to residents and taxpayers of Canyons District, students and parents of students, and current employees of the district. Patrons may provide board members with written documents. These documents must be emailed to the Office of Public Communications by noon the day following the board meeting, or can be turned into the board secretary here at the meeting. Time allotted for public comment is at the discretion of the board president. And tonight the board We have one individual that has signed up to address the board, so that patron will be given 3 minutes. And comments made during patron comment time are part of the public record. It is the board's practice to listen and take notes during patron comments. The Board of Education does not discuss matters that are not on the meeting's agenda, nor engage in public comment on individual students to protect their privacy or employee issues. If a patron wants to comment on a district employee's character, professional competence, or mental or physical health, the board requests that those comments be submitted to the board in writing. However, if the patron determines to verbally comment on personnel issues, the comments need to be civil and refrain from personal attacks, insults, defamatory, or slanderous comments about an individual. The Board of Education would like to make it clear that critical race theory is not part of the curriculum being used by Canyon School District. There are no plans to incorporate it into the curriculum or instruction in Canyon schools. The Board of Education values input on all sides of issues. To maintain decorum and respect, we ask that those in attendance refrain from applause or other types of demonstrations during the patron comment time, as well as throughout the meeting. So tonight, Chad Smith has signed up to address the board. And Mr. Smith, if you want to come forward.
Thank you. To be honest, I didn't prepare a lot of remarks because I thought that there would be more people here and I was going to react to whatever they said. So in lieu of that, maybe I'll just remember the time 4 years ago that my daughter was reminding me of when she was in 4th grade and she walked away from here asleep holding a bottle of Gatorade that she was given. So we have good memories. It's a super difficult time for education in the nation, in the world, in our district, in our schools. And I know everyone's quick to complain when that kind of stuff happens. And there's a lot of extra work and a lot of extra stress. And people don't always point out how they appreciate the extra effort and everything else that you're going under at this time. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's not just a teacher crisis and staffing crisis it's administrative as well as teachers. And thanks for sticking in there and helping out. Really appreciate that. In addition to the hard work and the extra stress, I wanted to thank you for your continued transparency, accessibility, openness to input, solicitation of input. I know that you've done a lot to be not only anxious for that input, but solicitous of it and anxious to respond to communications. I really, truly appreciate that. And when I first started complaining to you guys a few years ago, I didn't realize how good you were at that. And I've benefited from it over the years. Thank you. Speaking of which, you've received a lot of input recently around, I think, hoping for increased focus and support of the arts, whether that's through more elective choice. Also, I know there's a continued desire from us, certainly from Wendy and me, about later school start times for our kids. Still very, very interested in that. I sent an email to all of you on that, so I won't burn up any more time belaboring that point. Just suffice to say that we're still very anxious about those issues and what you'll do with those things as you work on the strategic plan. And just wanted to say thank you for doing a strategic plan and putting in this work and trying to make lemonade out of lemons by being opportunistic with some of the crazy situation we find ourselves in. Hopefully we come away with some new opportunities and solutions as well as problems after living through this harrowing experience of everything, COVID and otherwise. Speaking of otherwise, I also wanted to say, I know there's a lot of other issues with people wanting to split off districts or censorship or proposing their own curricula, and I'm out of time, but I appreciate, I just wanted to say that it's easy to lump all of the disgruntled parents and citizens together into one group, and we don't always divide so evenly. Speaking for Wendy and me, we're very anxious to keep a lot of things steady as she goes and not have an overhaul at a time when we're worried about keeping our teachers employed and keeping, having enough bus drivers and whatever else. So I just wanted to express a degree of trust that you're working on this and you care about this and you're trying to do the right thing, and appreciation for those efforts. And anxiousness for you to worry about some of those other issues as they come in. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Chip Watts, who has been doing a great job, and he's been having a hard time too. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate that. Okay, that concludes our patron comments this evening. And so next on the agenda are the consent agenda items. I will ask for a motion. And please, in making that motion, please list each of the items on the consent agenda.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda on the February 1st, 2022 agenda. Item A, approval of minutes of January 18th, 2022. B, approval of hire and termination reports. C, approval of purchasing bids. D, approval of student overnight travel. E, approval of new members of the Canyons Education Foundation Board. And F, approval of TSSP and land trust amendments for Bellevue, Oak Hollow, Park Lane, Peruvian Park, Silver Mesa, Midville Middle, and Mount Jordan.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion to this motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next, item 6A, 2022 legislative update. I will turn the time over to Charlie Evans, Director of External Relations, and Susan Edwards, Public Engagement Coordinator.
All right, so nice to be back with you guys. We've cut our presentation down to an hour and a half. Should we take a break now, or that's my goal, Mont. I would just like to know when you're going to be running the 2:22,
9:00 is my bedtime, Charlie. You're not going to make it.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bills here to talk about, and we'll go through them very quickly. But because we're going through them quickly doesn't mean we're happy to take any questions that you have about them and discuss them as long as you'd like to. The bill that we're dealing with today, you're kind of getting these in the order we've dealt with them this week, was Senator Miller's bill dealing with reading comprehension. I can't remember the title of it. But it is a bill dealing with K-3 reading and putting some money towards that in a new program that would provide reading coaches, especially in districts that don't have reading coaches. Early literacy outcomes. Sorry, thank you. That bill was in committee today and was substituted, and I have not had a chance to read the bill since it was substituted. But from hearing Senator Milner explain the changes, it appears to me that many of the things that we found concerning about the original draft have either been taken out or modified. We'll have to read that tonight or tomorrow to see if that is the case. I don't have any reason to doubt Senator Milner. I just haven't had a chance to read that. And so that bill is trending in a positive direction. The next bill I wanted to discuss, unless there's questions about that bill, are the full day kindergarten bill, which is being carried by Representative Waldrop. With the amount of money that the legislature has this year, it appears that there is some good momentum behind this bill. I would expect it to pass and to be funded and fully funded. Any questions about that? It provides all-day kindergarten and the option for all-day kindergarten. And so any parent can choose between a half day or a full day kindergarten. And it's still up to the parent, but those parents who do opt in, then it would be a normal, the program we run now, the parents pay some tuition and that wouldn't be required anymore.
You just answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess maybe I'm going a little too fast. I'll slow down here and just try to
So-
put some more explanation.
So Charlie,
Yes.
that means more buildings with more rooms, which then we don't have them. So then we have to build them. I mean, that's on us, right? But
Well, right. Maybe Leon will want to speak to that, but my understanding is we can accommodate that in our district. Is that right, Leon?
Depends on the school, if you ask, and the principal. We have room at some schools, we know. Other schools, we're still looking into that. It's my understanding we do not, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding it kicks in 2 years from now in 2024, that fall of 2024. So yeah, we have 2 years to prepare for this. And you don't have to offer it. We think we don't have to offer it at every location, but we don't know about that, or is that we just have to offer it at?
I think my
Or do-
understanding
is
is,
it-
there is a 3-year, what they're calling a 3-year ramp up, but my understanding is that we would need to offer it at
Every school starting in 2024. Okay.
I think we could do the half day at various locations
Yeah.
because the anticipation is that, most parents will take the
Yeah.
full day, and that might create a problem more with half day students is the thought at the legislature. Anyway, I don't know how it will play out on the ground.
Superintendent.
I'm just going to mention the WPU goes from half, I think, to full to one, right? Is that what I
0.55
understand?
up to
So
one, yeah.
Right.
We do think, that being said, we're still working, a dozen schools right now that are still looking at that. We need to get with the principal, and we may need to move people and programs, brain boosters from one place to another that we have to look at to make sure we have room. But we know it's coming, and we actually look forward to that coming as well. So it just will take a little logistical work at some of our schools.
And how many of the elementary schools currently have the supplemental hours program?
20. I think we have it at give or take 8. I think it's actually next year we're going to offer it at 20. There could be a couple that pull out just because we don't have the lack of enrollment. I think this year we're at 17, anticipating with Peruvian Park, Sprucewood coming back, trying it at Sprucewood again, and East Sandy. Keep in mind, we still have it full day at the 5 Title I schools, and we will have it all day at Glacier Hills, as it is right now, all day at Bellevue. So it is quite, most of our schools do have a full day kindergarten out there. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions on this one? Mrs. Nybauer.
With the conversion where full day kindergarten would be free and parents wouldn't be paying a tuition, as you were saying, it makes sense that will go, our rate of enrollment of full day is going to go quite high. So I know that the WPU has been converted from 0.55 to 1. And then is the surplus at the state level, they are going to subsidize the rest of incurred cost for this ramp up to 2024 to accommodate, we've got part-time teachers going to full-time, we've got busing situation, and we've got building situation. Is that funding coming from our legislators, or do we need to come up with that in other places in our budget? And if it is coming from the legislation, how long can we expect? Because I know there's a surplus this year, but that's going to go away. So how's that going to work?
So their intention is, for us to take care of those costs with the increased WPU. And that would be added into the WPU. And this year going forward. And there is a 3-year ramp up to accommodate the issues that you described, to give boards and school districts a chance to figure out how they're going to handle those. But the expectation would be that
We're going to cover it.
Would handle it with the additional money that would be coming from the WPU.
And with that analysis, is that reasonable that just that increase will cover all of that? Or will we need to pull that from other?
I think with the increase in WPU, we could handle the staffing part. That would be converting the teachers from half-time to full-time. It will actually help on busing because we won't be doing
One
those
less route.
half-day runs. The buildings would be the problem. They will not cover the building costs if we have to make modifications to classrooms or add classrooms on or move portables. That will have to come out of our capital.
Okay. So if this passes, that's something we'll be looking at for our budget with our capital funds.
I would assume there are other districts, I think, that are really up against it with regard to facilities. And I guess we'll have somewhat of a problem with that too. But
we won't have as big a problem with many others because our fifth graders, several years ago, we put our sixth graders into middle school. So that alleviated a lot of space there. And so we feel like our principals will have to learn to get a little creative in some schools.
Yeah.
And I think they know that's coming.
Well, a lot of states already offer this. I'm not opposed to it. I'm in favor of it. Just thinking about upcoming choices with budget. So thanks.
I think you'll have some.
Follow-up question.
Sounds like it.
Mr. Milliberg.
Leon, you said that would actually help with busing. So am I to understand from that parents that opt for continuing with half-day kindergarten will not be bused?
No, it's our option.
Figure out where this.
It's our understanding that if we go half day, then we'll still bus them. But if we go full day,
then it will be full day for everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
They won't have a half day option.
I think the bill says that parents still have the option. Parents still will have the option.
So if they have the option, then they would get bused, and then you won't have that saving from busing.
We'll have to look at that. Do we offer half day at certain schools? Does that make sense? And not at all.
And that's one item we've been working with the education community and the sponsor to try to see if that's allowable, is to not offer it, because you may end up with a enrollment either for full day or half day of 5 kids instead of a full class. And can we merge that in other places? That's one thing we're still working on. The
So
details.
what we're doing is we're trying to solve issues that we don't know if we have yet.
Right.
I like that.
Trying to anticipate all the potential problems. And of course we can't, but that will be one, because I suspect that in every school, there'll be some parents who want to continue with the half day, and that's going to create a problem. And that's why you guys were elected to these posts, to figure those out. And I'll leave it to you. I don't know the answer to it though, mine. But I do know that parents will have the option, and I can see that there's going to be some parents in every school that will want to continue with half day.
And kindergarten itself stays optional,
Right. That nothing about that changes.
whether it's half day or full day. Yeah.
Right. Should I move on? Okay. There are 5. Well, there are 3 public bills dealing with curriculum and curriculum adoption. There's another 2 more that are currently boxcars that we're not 100% sure that could deal with this issue. It's been a big issue here in the first couple of weeks of the legislative session. One of those bills is already, I don't want to say it's dead, but the sponsor has said that he's dropping it. It was Representative Tusher's bill. I was just trying to think of the right way to characterize it in a public meeting. It was pretty egregious, I felt like, and a lot of people agreed with me, and I believe that's why Representative Tusher has dropped it. Senator Johnson's bill has just dropped this afternoon at 5, was numbered. I haven't had a chance to read it. I have heard from many of Senator, and so has Susan, heard from many of Senator Johnson's colleagues in the Senate who have been concerned about what they understood the content of that bill is going to be. And so I don't suspect it's going to be one that we will love. And then there is the bill that Senator Fillmore is running. which I think is much more reasonable, certainly than the other two bills that we're dealing with. But there is quite a bit of pushback on that as well. Susan and I have been talking with him and pointing out the problems that we see in it and problems that have come from several of you, that concerns that you guys have raised with us. We've raised those with him. He has seemed willing and interested in dealing with us, and we're just trying to decide what the best approach is, whether this bill is going to pass, and if so, we would engage more fully with him on that. If we got the sense that it wasn't going to pass, then we would probably just stand to the side and let it go away. I think that's fair to say, based on our conversations. Are there any questions about these? I'd be happy to go over them in a little more detail, but I think we all understand what they do. Okay, then there is a bill. Should I move to the next bill?
Any questions on those?
Then there's a bill dealing with school fees that has a fiscal note on it. Basically, the general goal of the bill is to eliminate all curricular fees and to replace it with money, with a line item that would eventually be folded into the WPU, but would continue as a line item here for a number of years. There are a couple of problems with that bill. I'm not sure that the fiscal note is large enough, but perhaps it is. Leon, as Leon mentioned, we have our sixth graders in middle school, and this bill it has some language in there expressly prohibiting us charging any fees to a sixth grader. And I have been trying to get with Representative Roberts for a number of days to ask him if it is his intention that sixth graders would not be able to participate in any extracurricular or co-curricular activities. I don't think that that's his intention, but when you look at the wording of that language, I'm not sure. I mean, it just expressly says you cannot charge them any fees, period, in the story. And then there is another language in there about elementary students where currently the statute states, and I want to make sure I get the wording right, that we can't charge fees to elementary students during the school day, and that during the school day is what allows us to carry on our orchestra programs and others. But that language in the school day is deleted by this bill. And so I don't think it's his intention, although it might be. I don't think it's his intention to interfere with that kind of extracurricular activity. And I'm hoping to work this out with Representative Roberts, but I have not been able to talk to him about it yet. And so I'm not sure of his intentions and whether or not he is going to be open to these suggestions. If there are no questions about that, I'm going to let Susan talk about
I think Mr. Wrigley.
A couple of questions on that. I heard on KSL, they're all excited about all this. Question is, does the fees they're going to be offering us cover our cost? How do they define fees? Is it the state says this is how much we pay, and if our cheer team is higher than that, then we eat the difference?
Well, yeah, how this got figured, and again, it's, as Charlie mentioned, it's curricular fees. So all the extracurricular fees, the cheerleading, the drill, the football, baseball still stay in place. You can't charge those.
So those would stay.
Yeah,
it's just
those, I think his intent, overall arching intent, is in during the school day from 7:30 to 2:30. It's free. Outside of that, you can charge.
So what would go within that then? Which would mean by curriculum fees? Because we don't really charge.
That would be any class fees for art, ceramic supplies, or the compasses and whatever things they use in the math class. And
so we would, because I think there's sort of portrayed, at least in the radio, that was almost an extracurricular fee. It'd cover everything, and parents wouldn't have any cost.
No.
It's just
I think it was
curricular fees.
Curricular fees. We had to all districts had to submit how much they collected in curricular fees last year. Our Canyons was about $2 million. Statewide, it was about $55 million. So they have tried to set aside money for that. We are understanding, instead of ongoing, they're looking at a 3-year one-time of 180 million, so roughly 60 million each year. And then to see if it continues after that, or if we just got to learn to phase out and live without them. So it's going to be a challenge. I'm not sure how they're going to fund this going forward. It looks like they are going to base maybe the funding on just high school, junior, middle, and high school students coming to us, and then we'll have to allocate it out to the schools. But it worries me 3 years out if it's just one time, how we can.
Which is sort of bad, gets people used to not paying it. Is this being taken from any other pot that would have been allocated to the school? So the school really is not getting anything more, it's just getting it in a different line item?
Well, any amount of money they get could be given to schools. And so in that, that is the case.
Another area that we actually may need it, that may not get it because it goes to this or something. Okay.
I think Dr. Robbins had a.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Oaks and then Superintendent.
This will be quick. So it's worthwhile to note that this is actually one of the legislative priorities for USBA, is asking for the state legislature to allocate money for the school fee, since it's been such a large burden. So I actually think it's a clever way to do it. If they can figure out the math, that'll be really helpful in the long run. All of the districts were behind it.
I think if they ever fund this once, they will, I was about to say have to continue it, but they will almost have to continue it. If they ever fund it once, they're going to, we'll continue to get it, I think.
Superintendent.
What's the discussion around projects like SHOP, where there's levels of projects students can pick?
Well, this bill hasn't been run yet. It hasn't
Okay.
been in a committee yet. And so I have not heard an explanation of that. I don't know.
I just wonder how that, remember, we used to have that discussion around just the basic projects were funded, but I'm wondering, especially in shop classes or where they're picking projects, I mean, some of those projects are very, very expensive. And so are we on the hook for that, or just something to
I don't
think
think
about.
so, or I do think so under the way that the bill is currently drafted. And I think what's happening, and like I want to emphasize again, I have not spoken with Representative Roberts, but I'm sure that he's getting education on all this stuff. That these issues are much more complicated than people realize when they're coming at it from the outside. And I think that's probably why this bill it's not stalled, but I think that's probably why this bill hasn't started running yet. Or those types of issues.
Mrs. Schill.
So kind of along with that, would that include CTEC? Anything at CTEC? Because that's during the day and curricular.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I would. Just in looking at the bill, it says wood for wood shops. Looks like it's included as an instructional supply, meaning you can charge a fee for it. Yes, but we would have to verify. It goes wood is one thing, but you get into other types of robotics and other things, and CTEC, as Amber mentioned. Yes.
I have a question about this one too, when you do get to talk to them. So a couple of years ago, when they redid the school fee expectations and responsibilities, they were now, as a local board, required to approve this fee schedule and turn it into the state by April 1st. And we're required to have 2 opportunities for the public to weigh in on it, so they can review the draft fee schedule and then weigh in on it. And I just see that as a timing issue for this upcoming year, because I believe in the bill, it says it's effective the 22-23 school year.
Right.
So
you've mentioned that to me before.
Yeah,
Thank you
have a
for
question
bringing
about
it up
that.
too, because I had forgotten, but I will talk to Representative Roberts about that as well.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this one? Okay.
And then I'm going to have Susan talk to us about the Hope Scholarship Bill, and that'll be all we have for the evening. Thank you very much.
Hope is maybe a misnomer. This is bills previously known as voucher bills, which now we call Hope Scholarship Bills. It sounds better. That has not been released publicly yet. It will come in the House from Representative Perucci, And then we'll move to the Senate under Senator Collimore's name. We've talked to him quite a bit. It's about 38-page bill and some 1,000 lines of code that we are working on processing, still the protected draft, but we are looking at that and processing that, and it should be out public. He thought it would be out before today, but it still is not public yet. But it's a behemoth. Any questions on that? Yes, Mont.
Okay, so that would be a credit off of the state income tax, which would reduce the pool available for public ed.
I don't believe it's listed as a credit. I don't think this one is a credit bill. This one is just taking budget taxpayer dollars and adding,
Not coming out of the income tax fund then.
coming out of income tax fund, but not as a credit. If you remember, one last year was ran as an income tax credit that businesses could
Mhm.
apply into, could do a scholarship, if you will, and get a credit. This is not structured that way. This is,
So if it doesn't come out as a credit, is it a deduction instead?
well, I should say that differently. So this one is just giving budget to, it's just giving a budget.
It doesn't hit the tax return at all then?
Correct.
Okay, it's just taking funds from the income tax pool and giving it to private school.
And it's somewhat dependent upon income level of the family. Based on your income level, no one is excluded, but if the level that your poverty line is at depends on how much you get, up to, I believe it was about 2.5 WPU, if I remember correctly, to go with the student. And it's not limited to tuition. It has, you can spend the money on transportation to and from school, or before, after school activities, some other things. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, the lower the income, the more you can pull out of the fund.
Correct.
And the higher the income, the less
It's a
you-
set up as a scholarship. And so the more that you would earn in scholarship funds. And again, it's still protected. So we only know, I think he's disclosed this to USBA and to UEA and to a few entities. So we've discussed it, but we haven't seen all of the language yet.
And the state legislature is considering, it appears seriously from just listening to the news, an overall either rate reduction or putting in a whole bunch of cockamamie credits, such as they were looking at a state earned income credit.
Income tax credit. cut.
What do those bills look like? Because those also reduce the pool of money available for public education.
I think what they're going to choose is the income rate reduction. And I don't look for that to happen. I would suspect that would happen at the same time that they do the bill, or excuse me, the budget, which I would assume would be around March the 2nd. So that week before that, I would expect them to make a decision, what, if any, tax cut they're going to give, and do it then. So we're about a month away from, and that'll be one of those bills that they'll drop one night and then they'll run it through in a few days, a couple days. And so we're probably a month
just a feel
away.
with a little bit of Kentucky windage out there.
Say it again.
Give me a feeling for, the Kentucky windage you've got out there. How much is that going to impact funds that are available for public education?
Well, it'll definitely affect that. But the thing we should bear in mind is they have a huge surplus again this year.
But if there's a rate reduction that comes and they draw from that huge surplus just becomes a big surplus, and they do it again, it becomes just a surplus.
Right. And
this is, I'm looking for sustainability on that as well.
right. And I don't want to be put in position of defending what they're doing. But I think from their perspective, they think they can make a modest cut and still not really overly affect the revenue stream that the other thing we should bear in mind too about the way they're doing the budgeting this year, because they feel like that the federal money that has gone out during COVID has really amped up the tax revenues. A lot of these revenues this year, which would normally be considered ongoing revenues, they're treating as one-time revenues. And so if they're wrong and it does continue on in the coming years, in the next budget year, then they will start treating them as ongoing revenues. And so all of that has to be, they are considering all of that when they are trying to decide whether or not to do a rate cut. But I do think there will be a rate cut. How much it will be, I don't know, but there does seem, everybody I talk to seems to be on board with that, at least on the Republican side.
Okay, thank you.
And I heard in discussion back to the school fees that someone said, in a sense, that's like a tax cut, to a $60 million tax cut to the public. So, I mean, it's not,
considered
but it's
that
like
way.
that.
Right.
It's returning funds into homes and households.
Right.
Mr. Wrigley.
So just one question on who, is it private schools, religious schools, any school that you could have hope with?
Not have eyes on it right now. I believe so.
Interesting.
I can ask.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think there's any restrictions, but I don't know. I'm
In
not
the
sure.
version that we've discussed, I haven't seen, but we again have not seen the full bill yet.
Okay. Mrs. Nybauer and then Mrs. Oaks.
I'm going to have to go back to Senator Fillmore. Sorry. It's action packed. There's so much in there. So a couple of questions. In that bill, it talks about a local school board shall administer and implement federal educational programs in accordance with Title 53E. How is that different than what we're doing now with the federal programs that we're expected to run? Is there a difference?
Which
I
bill?
don't know the answer to that.
Senator Fillmore.
Yeah, I don't
And
know the answer to that.
there's so many obligations for the school board in his bill packed to the bottom. Are we talking about reducing those and simplifying some of those?
Well, the basic concept of his bill, the way he described it, so I'm going to tell it to you the way he tells it to me,
Mhm.
is that there'll be instructional materials to be dealt with in one of two ways. If it is a curriculum that the board adopts, then there's a process that the board will use to adopt that. For all other instructional materials that would be used in a classroom, the board would adopt a policy that school administrators and teachers would use. And so if a teacher wanted to bring in something outside, then that teacher would have to resort to the policy that this board passed.
Mhm.
There are not any definitions or any requirements in this bill. The way it currently reads, the board is free to adopt whatever policy it wants to adopt, but it would be required to adopt the policy. So everything that would be taught in a classroom, and let me just say it this way, all instructional materials that come into a classroom would come one of two ways: through the board adoption of a curriculum or under the board's policy dealing with instructional materials. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for that. Partially, I was hoping that was the case because it does go into videos and everything. Can we find out a little bit more about his ideas with the minimum school program funds? I think as you scroll to the bottom of his bill, there's just so many things packed in there. And is this supposed to be implemented for 2022, 2023 also? If it passes?
For the coming school year.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I can email you separately, but I have like 10 questions of not the primary purpose, but all the stuff that's packed in towards the bottom.
Emails will be happy to get you all those answers.
Great. Thank you.
Mrs. Oaks?
So I just want to clarify with the Hope Scholarship. Conceivably, parents could choose to put their children or their student in a private school that has no state oversight. Is that correct?
As I understand it, they are asking the state board to come up with an accountability process
Okay.
for where any school or entity that this would go to, administered by a third party entity yet to be named or hired. And they would be responsible for, the state board would be responsible for coming up with accountability. There is absolutely no definition that I'm aware of yet, again, not having read the bill, that I'm aware of yet that defines what the accountability would look like.
So it sounds as though we could have additional administrative staff at the state board level assigned to that.
I think the state board level would need to come up with that. I don't know that that would require additional staff, but
Okay.
they would be hiring a third-party vendor to, it would be, yeah, they would be hiring a third-party vendor. And I think that was spelled out in there.
Because I have major concerns as a parent with a child with disabilities, where I have been at schools where there wasn't much oversight, and compared to the hoops and the transparency that the public school system goes through, it's deplorable. And so I really hope that whoever's listening or thinking about a bill like this, that they're really thinking through those pieces. Public schools have so much oversight in so many different areas, and allowing public funds to go ostensibly to private institutions where that's not in place concerns me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you so much for all you're doing. I know it's just incredibly difficult and things happen fast, and we just appreciate your representation of us up there and our priorities and our values. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
You guys have a nice week.
Okay, next on the agenda is a COVID-19 update. I will turn time over to Superintendent Robbins.
Thank you, President. I'd just first like to thank Charlie and Susan for their work at the legislature and keeping us updated of everything that's going on, and also Amber's leadership with USBA and JLC this year. It's been great to collaborate with other board members and superintendents, and just want to tell Chad Smith, thank you for the positive comments tonight. That's very well received. So yay, more COVID. You've all been patiently waiting for this. I know this is just like Groundhog Day, over and over again. But to Chad's comment earlier tonight, just so the public's aware, we had a workshop focusing on our strategic vision planning. And I mentioned just how refreshing it was, just from a personal and professional perspective, that since I've been superintendent in the 2 years, that at least every board meeting that I can remember, we've had a COVID update since I've been here. And so it was refreshing to have a work session that was focused on teaching and learning and what we're all in this for. So I thought that was great. So I just want to tell the board and our cabinet members and leaders that were there tonight just how much I appreciate their input and all the thoughts and work that's going into the strategic vision. And it does, as mentioned, it as hard and perilous as this time has been, it has opened up some opportunities to think about the future and where the district's headed. So that's great. Okay, so thinking about COVID tonight actually is positive, and I say that with a lot of optimism, thinking about where we've been. As you can see in the slide deck, we still have this commitment that we've had from the beginning to keep our schools open for in-person instruction, at the same time balancing everybody's safety and well-being the best that we can. As we know, we've been in some changes and some ongoing disruptions with Omicron and how this has affected the economy, our schools, families, all the above. And recently in the legislature, House Bill 183 passed through the Senate and the House. It has not been signed by the governor yet, but it also has an impact on how we address COVID going forward. So you can see just a couple of things there mentioned in the bill, that it suspends test to stay. We know that with Omicron and its spread, that test to stay has not been as effective as a mitigation strategy. And we've also seen the supply chain run low at the same time. Also, the county has changed its incubation period to 7 days. That actually went into effect today on the county website. So for those watching in the public, that those days have been changed to 7. So you'll see that those case counts come off every 7 days instead of every 14. I think it's important to clarify too, though, that if there is a positive test, that still remains at 5 days of isolation and recommended 5 additional days with a mask. And this is a little problematic. We've talked about this before. As the public knows and our parents know, we've moved from our own dashboard to referencing the county dashboard. That's a little bit complicated by the fact that the recommendation has been that if you're symptomatic, to not test. And so you've seen in the slide deck, those numbers have dramatically decreased in our test, in our own protocols. So it's really hard to gauge exactly, how many cases are present in the school. And so we'll talk a little bit about moving to a different metric system as we go forward. And I think, the positive in that is that it's moving us more away, more in an exit strategy from case counts to more looking at it holistically like we normally would around any type of virus or illness, right? And a more of a focus on absenteeism and staff capacity more than case counts. So the exciting news is that we're stabilizing. So this is terrific considering where we were just a few weeks ago. And you can see that represented in the number of tests there, peaking at over 600 in our own protocol. And so we're down in the low 50s. I believe our plan is to move back to 2 days per week in offering testing to employees and students here at the district. So that continues to be just an amazing service. And I don't say this enough, but I think we all know how important our school nurses have been in this process, and just their leadership and willingness to continue to serve in those circumstances is much appreciated. So you can also see in our courtesy COVID test, just a representation of positivity and that trend line down. So that's very positive as well. And you can see this curve in our zip codes as those numbers have continued to decline. So very positive on that end. So looking at absenteeism, I think this is also a metric that, we want to move forward with and looking at. You can see the trend line there. I just want to comment too, you saw some of the data around our increased attendance. So it's exciting. Our kids are coming back to school. And I think this is probably a clear, more true picture of what's happening in the schools, because obviously if a student is sick, it's most likely mom and dad or guardian is going to keep them home instead of sending them to school. So this would indicate to me that, we may have hit a crest, knock on wood, and we're on the decline on the other side of that. And that does follow a national trend in just how cases have risen and spiked and crested and then declined. But you can see also, I mentioned in an email earlier in the week, from going back to our attendance rates, we've increased over the last 5 days up to district-wide 87, 88, and as of yesterday, 88% attendance. And that's up almost 10% from the week that we spiked in COVID. We were around 78% at that point. So a 10% increase in attendance. So it's great to see that our students are coming back to school. Employee absences have also decreased, so this is good. Really appreciate Everett, Perry, and Steve Diamond in HR. I hope you each morning take a look at those numbers. Remember at the peak, fact, it was in that board meeting, I believe we reported 209 employees out on that day. And today, I believe we were at 32. So, and as you see that, it's still in that report, it looks pretty equally and evenly distributed across schools. There's a few cases here and there, but very few. And I think today we are down to 11 teachers that were out. So that's another key metric that we want to look at. I ran this by our county health department. Jeff actually deserves the credit in kind of spitballing these numbers, but we were kind of trying to think about what's critical mass when it comes to the number of employees and students being out, right? And so as we talked about it, we were thinking, if you get between 5 and 10% of your staff being out, and not just for COVID, but out of the building that day, you're running into a quality assurance issue where, we may not be able to provide quality instruction to our students. And so that would trigger this conversation that we'll talk about here in just a second, but it's great to see those numbers declining as well. Substitute teacher coverage. Sally Sampson in HR has been sharing this information with me daily. We're hovering right in the 70 to 75% fill rate. So that's also up at the highest point in cases and people being out. We were right in the late high 50s. And so our coverage rate is much higher. And I want to really express deep gratitude to our district office staff. So over the last month or so, our district office staff has gone out and subbed themselves. And I hope we get to recognize individuals here at the district that have gone out multiple times to cover for classes. So, this has been an all hands on deck effort. And I'm just very grateful that people are willing, right, they have all this on their plate. And I know that, and they're still willing to sign up to go out and sub for our teachers. So you can see those numbers you can see how that's demonstrated in the end of the graph there. Our sub fill rate much higher, and teachers and employees covering for each other has decreased. So that's a positive sign. Again, we want to stay with our plan of precision monitoring and being more surgical in our response. This has been our approach from the start. And I'll say it again, Dr. Webb has always helped to really foster this idea of disruption, suppression, and restore, right? And I think the 5-day break, as hard as that was that disruption that stopped the cycle and really got us back on a downhill trend. And I think other districts chose to go out for up to 10 days, and we only picked up the one Tuesday and then came back to school the rest of the week. So I just, commend everybody, all of our employees, our parents, our students, again, as a school community, stepping up to ensure that our kids have in-person instruction. So going forward with this new legislation and just thinking about kind of this new approach and the environment that we're in, and that doesn't mean that, this can't change, but we would really be focused on a couple of things. So looking at staff capacity or operational capacity, once we get to 5% in operational capacity or staff being out, and we also hit that 2% threshold of cases or 30 in an individual school, that would then trigger a monitoring space of 5 days. And the reason that we would do that, there's a couple of fold here. One is in the new law that's likely to be passed, the board would have to submit an application to move a school to online. So it's a letter. It's more than just me getting permission from state superintendent. It requires state superintendent, the governor, the speaker, and the Senate president to approve. So don't know how I feel about that, but it's what it is. So in doing so, the board, obviously we would need to notice up a meeting and potentially an emergency meeting, but hopefully within that 5 days, we can either see a downward trend, or if we see that trend going up and we know we have kind of tip of the iceberg effect again, you would have time to notice up that meeting, get the letter of application to those 4 people, and get approval to make that decision if necessary. In between those 5 days of monitoring, then we would also look at the increase from 5% to 10%. So that would be one metric, the 2% cases or 30, depending on the size of the school. And then we would also look at absenteeism in the building. If it fell to 70% attendance rate, then a combination of those would trigger consideration to move the school to online. But short of that, we would continue to maintain in-person instruction. But hopefully this gives some clarity. I know a lot of people have had questions about going forward, what this looks like. And so we're trying to use the best information that we have available to make that call. Let me back up. Any questions on all of that? And then we'll talk remote Friday.
Any questions, board? Mr. Wrigley.
So at this point, in the very beginning, we closed down the whole school district. At this point, we'd be just looking strategically school by school. If that specific school was that, we would go for online for that specific school for maybe a week or whatever.
So in the plan, we would recommend that if we do pivot, we would only go 3 or a 5 day window of time. And that's based on Dr. Webb's recommendation that he believes that shorter interval cycles with Omicron is more effective than long 10-day, windows of time. And we know too, right, the whiplash effect that those longer windows of time have had on our students in the past. So I think the shorter that we can narrow that window and still gain the benefit of disrupting the cycle of the virus, the better.
So the other question is, the governor authorized yesterday or so that the state employees can volunteer for up to 30 hours in a year. I suspect it'd be like jury duty, where we would have to pay them and they only make the difference in their salary. I'm not sure how that would be. And what would be the ramifications at this point? We'd have to clear them, go through employment and our substitute teachers program, or what would happen?
First of all, they would still get their checks from the state. So
okay, so it's not like jury duty where we would pay and then they get
don't.
the difference.
They still get paid. They're just asked to leave their job up to 30 hours and come here, but they would still get their pay from the state. So they would not do that. We would bring them in and give them a quick over, as we do with all our subs. We have a training. It's I think it's can do online too, where they can quickly do that. Also with their food, they can also work in our cafeterias as well, where we're greatly understaffed as well. So we'd encourage, we hope that's taken.
We'd probably have to do the BCIs on some of them, I would guess. Not all state employees are BCI'd.
Would have to check that out. Yeah.
Okay. And the last one, I know there has been some concern about us having some Fridays off. However, our total number of Fridays is far less than the schools that just let everybody off for 10 days. So, I mean, we've been really trying to cut them out of time that our parents have to pick up this burden. But it got to a point that we logistically didn't have enough staff to keep the doors open or the kids in the school buses, which resulted in that one extra day we gave off. And then the Fridays, the last couple of Fridays that we've gone.
We'll address that here.
Okay, thank you.
I also, just to back up to point out just the decline in our case counts as well. On the county website currently, all of our schools are in green. I don't know that, like we've said, that necessarily is an accurate display of how many cases are in the school. But just to give you some context and the public context of that, our 5 day count on January the 9th, when we were at our peak in the district, 5 day count was 505 cases. So it has declined rapidly. So that gives you some context. And I would recommend, we'll talk about this more as well, but we've been in tier 3 response up to this point from from that time until now. And I think we're in a position to move back to tier 2 restrictions as soon as we complete the presentation and going forward. So to your point, Steve, I mentioned last time I would come back with a report on remote learning Fridays. And let me just point out, I think at this point from where I'm at, and the board can weigh in on this, but I think with our trend line and the current position that we're in, we've always really applied the principle of prudence when it comes to this decision in responding to the environment and the situation we're in. And I think considering the environment that we're now in and the direction that our trend line is going, obviously that can change, and we know that. But the value of those days in person in March, April, May, I feel very good about moving those back to in person. Considering our trend line, and I think that I know that may feel different to different people, but I think applying our approach with using prudence in all of these decisions in recognition of not just our teachers, but our parents and everybody's sacrifice to make this work, that would be the prudent thing to do. Now, that doesn't mean that, there won't be another variant that pops up that can cause us grief like this last one did, but we can evaluate that. I would recommend if we do, since the board took action to change the calendar, that in that February 15th, by that time, we'll have more data to look at, that if we move those days back to in person, that I would ask the board for action on the calendar on the March, April, and May remote Fridays. So a little bit about remote learning Fridays, right? I think it has been, to Mon's point in our last meeting, it has been a little bit ambiguous about what that actually looks like. I think, in the middle of the pandemic, from what I've learned, and I know you've received lots of emails, as I have, from teachers and parents and staff, and I submitted to you some input from our students as well, that it's everybody feels a little bit different about what that looks like. I don't think with remote learning Fridays that it's something that when there's issues, it's very difficult to use a blanket flock shot approach. It's probably, at least more that I'm learning about it, the best way to deal with the issues that come with remote learning Fridays is to deal with those on an individual basis. But I just wanted to present the remote learning expectations, because I know there's been questions about that. First off, of what we expect for our teachers to do on those days, and you saw it. We'll show some of the data, some of the engagement data that gives you a snapshot into looking at what is happening. But I want to express my deep appreciation to our teachers and our staff for their work. I know, there's a lot to that. The mental health side of this, and people being able to just stay on top of life and function and still be able to deliver instruction. As you mentioned, Steve, we've been committed to in person probably more than any district in the state, and I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, trying to balance these needs. So you can see there what some of the highlights in our expectations are for that. But secondly, I think it's important that we highlight expectations for our students. We really need them to log in, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at the same time, but we also need them to engage. And if it's not on their Chromebook, through email or whatever it is that they can do, we still, I think, are plagued a bit by the digital divide. That's something that we have not completely solved. We have many students that still lack high-speed internet access at home. And that's not just a Canyons issue, but that's a state issue, and we need to really figure that out going forward. But I think it's important that our students know, and we have that expectation that they engage us, and you can see that in some of the Canvas data that's there. And I think it's important too to note that that's just one snapshot of data. That does not tell the whole narrative of what's going on. I know in our elementary schools, they're engaging students in different ways with packets or other, hands-on materials. And that's also part of it. But there's expectations for both to engage as much as possible on that day. So you can see some of the Canvas data. I sent that to you in a more detailed view so you can see it by school. That just highlights across the district average page views by student and by level. So it gives you a little bit of a snapshot into, how that looks. Canvas submissions, average per student per level. So you can see what they're, at least through Canvas, what they're turning in. Average number of active Chromebooks. So this is per school per day. I have some concerns with this when you're thinking about the size of an entire school and the number of active Chromebooks, on that given day. Obviously, I'd like to see that number much higher, but it does indicate that many students are engaging. It also, I think a caveat with that too is, remember, many of our students have their own devices that we would not be able to tell if, they're active that way. So if they're using their own device or from another computer, that would not register in this data set. But obviously, if we're providing the Chromebooks, we want to see higher levels of engagement. And then you can also see minutes of Chromebook use, average minutes of Chromebook use. So, okay, that's a lot to absorb. Any questions on that part or on the COVID response part?
Mrs. Neubauer?
I just have two brief comments. First, thank you for the suggestion of using prudence and looking at removing the other virtual days for later in the calendar. I'm grateful that you suggested that. That was something I was going to suggest tonight, and I'm grateful for that. I've had a lot of feedback from a lot of parents regarding the concern for the virtual Fridays. And I do know that it was prudent for us to do that at this time when we had the surge, but it's also nice to be able to take away those at the back of the calendar because of the extras we put in. I wanted to you thanked the teachers and staff, which I think is so important because I know that we've gone through so much of shortage. And I just also wanted to express my thanks to parents. I know that on Fridays for the parents to make sure the kids get it done, especially at the elementary school level, is a task. You said something that I was really interested in. You said with the elementary school that packets are being sent home, which I think is pretty much the standard, which is great for younger children, less screen time. And then you mentioned hands-on activities, and I haven't had that experience yet. And I was wondering if that's something that we could maybe encourage, because I think that would bring some excitement to that Friday day for these elementary school kids that just have these packets to get through. If we could maybe have a push for that, even
Or
just,
you're speaking, I'm thinking of more like math manipulatives. And
I'm just thinking like in the two virtual Friday, obviously not the one this week, but the next one coming up, if we could even send out a message to the elementary school teachers. I've gotten so much feedback from parents regarding the elementary. If we could ask for some sort of little hands-on activity that's a learning experience that the parents could help them do, it might spread out the monotony of the packets.
Yeah.
And I think parents would be thrilled with that option if it wouldn't create too much work. Just a thought.
I appreciate that suggestion, Holly. And I mean, for me, most of the, and you guys, you receive most of the emails from our elementary, the very high engagement with our elementary teachers and students, at least from what I can gather. But there's always room for improvement with this for sure. And I think trying to make that as engaging and as fun, right, as we can, we can always do better. So thank you.
Mr. Milberg.
Yeah, Dr. Robbins, at our last meeting, I asked for some of this stuff to come back, and I appreciate you digging that out. One of the main concerns I had was accountability. I'm kind of seeing what's expected, but I'm missing the accountability part of it. And I'm just guessing or assuming, but I hate that word assume because we know where that gets you. But that the building administration would be somewhat monitoring what's going on with the teachers. Is there anything such as even teacher attendance on a virtual day that is being tracked? Or, you talk about collaborating with other teachers. Is there a record being made of who's in attendance for collaboration meetings?
So the expectation, other than the 5-day when, I felt like just to get maximum benefit of people not being in the building, that we said, we don't want you in the building if you don't have to be, right? But on these Fridays going since then, the expectation has been that you're in the building, but I will.
I mean, do you have any feel for if that is happening?
I get the sense that they are in the building. It'd be you guys can, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know because I don't see it.
Yeah.
And, my heart tells me these are professionals and they're like a salaried person working at any other business.
Yeah.
And you trust them, and that's what happens.
Yes.
But there's also accountability for the end product, educating the kids, that we have a right to expect that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Oaks?
I do think that part of the confusion has come that between the snow days, the virtual days, there's been some differences in the different days, a little bit in expectations, and parents are having a difficult time being able to follow the moving target. I think what we could improve a little bit in how we're communicating with parents about what the expectations are, like for them to even see that list in an email, so they have an understanding of whether or not they have one of their kids' teachers is or isn't fulfilling that obligation, or they have a point of reference that they can reach out to the teacher, send an email and say, hey, my students tried to reach you to be able to come in and meet with you, and I understand that's the expectation. Part of the feedback I've gotten, particularly at the high school level, is that a lot of parents have just assumed that it's just a teacher off day because they're overwhelmed, not realizing, and these are parents that in good faith, like they're not being critical. They just didn't realize that there was an expectation of learning going on that day. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if it needs to be on a school website so parents can get on there, or if we just send something out and say, we understand there's been some confusion. We want to clarify what's expected, what your child at this, elementary, middle, and high school ought to be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. And we can do that from the district level. And then I think at the site level, some of the emails I've seen our principals send out we'll go through, this is what I'm thinking of. One of the middle school, I can't remember which principal email I saw that had exactly that, but being more uniform and consistent with that, I think would be positive. So,
well, I know there were some emails that went out at the beginning of the year when we initially instituted the virtual Fridays, but a lot has changed since then, and decisions we've made as a board. And I think the public, it's a little bit of a whiplash, right, of things that we've done. Oh, by the way, we're taking this day off. I mean, it's not something that we've ever wanted to call up, that's for sure. But in order to keep parents on top of it and engaged in the way that we'd like them to be, I think that they need to be aware of what the current expectation is.
Yeah. And just to comment to that, Amanda, I want our parents to know, like I think I've said this before, and our staff, that, it's so important, not just because obviously our job is to educate kids and to provide a high quality experience every day that we can, but this idea that this doesn't impact the economy is a very real thing. And so for those parents that I've got emails from expressing, anger and frustration about missing work or the impact that this has had on families, that's a very real thing too. And we feel that need. I mean, the economy works because we're all in concert in that, and it's all congruent in how we function, right? And so I think recognizing on those Fridays, I mean, it impacts everybody, right? Daycare, jobs, lost time. I mean, I give a lot of credence to that. And I want those parents to understand that I recognize that, the heavy burden that also causes on that side. And we have been committed to in-person learning from the start, and trying to be prudent in how we balance all of that. So,
well, and I actually had one principal who spoke with me a couple of weeks ago about her distress. It's a really hardworking elementary principal that has really tried to make sure that virtual Fridays are a positive learning experience for the kids as much as they can. One point was, we're asking a lot of the teachers, how much are we reminding parents, please open your kid's backpack. Please check in with them. They said we can do everything that we can on our end, but if we don't have engaged parents on the other end, then there's only so much that the learning that happens. And the other was a little bit akin to it was, if there is a problem, those principals actually want to know about it.
They do.
They want to know about it. And please reach out to your principal and say, I'm not getting anything from this teacher, and so that they can go and address that rather than allow that frustration to continue.
Yeah. And like I said, I think the more that we can address the situation at the moment, at that level, the better, versus trying to blanket, cover all of these issues, because it is different in different places, and there's a lot of different factors, going into that. I mean, I feel we still have many students, like I said, that don't have high-speed internet at home. I mean, how are they engaging us? That's tough, and we got to continue to close that gap as well. So
yeah, I mean, it has to be a joint effort, right?
Yep.
For sure. And I just want to give a shout out to the middle schools. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but you're killing it in terms of getting your kids on and engaged. I was so impressed to see that.
Mrs. Schill.
Okay, a couple things. I do want to point out that, at least for high school kids, I think a lot of times the high school kids use their own devices at home. Like, I know my son does that. He doesn't bring his Chromebook home. Anyway, so those numbers actually may be a little higher than what's on there. The second point is, I mean, I agree with what everyone's saying with maybe getting rid of the virtual days. But then the other thing is, didn't we do the virtual days because teachers are burned out? Was it only about COVID? I thought it was multiple reasons.
Okay, so really the root of the issue is absenteeism and students, moving in and out of classrooms. And so our teachers are having to really ramp up their Canvas page. So they're in dual modality, right? And that, I think, I mean, like I said, it's hard to predict, right? And we'll just keep monitoring the situation. But I think looking at our trend line and where this is all headed, it's not going to require as much work on the Canvas side as it has. But that really was the root. I think that was the root cause of the stress, is that we had such a high spike. Remember in that slide on that board, at that board meeting in January, we had a 95% increase in secondary absenteeism. So we're back, knock on wood, cross our fingers, but I think we're back to more regular attendance than we had. So that's why I would think it would be prudent, if things stay the same, that we can get back to in person.
And I agree with that. I just want to make sure, kind of remind the board of why we did that, because teachers are still burned out and exhausted and overwhelmed.
Mrs. Neibauer.
I just wanted to comment to that. Just today, I was speaking to a single mother who takes a penalty when she takes time off work to be with her children. And we did add Tuesday, January 18th, Friday, January 28th, Friday, February 4th, and Friday, February 11th. So we added 4. And, and my recommendation would be to take away 2, Friday, March 25th, and then Friday, April 22nd, all schools except Brighton High, and then Friday, April 29th, Brighton High only. I would be interested as a board in making that decision tonight, because parents need to plan ahead, and these working situations, we do need to recognize that there are plenty of parents that don't have as much flexibility with their work schedules, and it would unload a lot of stress and provide a lot of relief for them to be able to tell their employers tomorrow, hey, I don't have to take off those 2 days. So I'd be very interested in doing that, since the trend lines are down and since we have gained 5, just to take away 2. I'd be really interested in that. And I've gotten so many emails too about parents concerned about the level of education for their kids with the virtual days. So I'd be really interested in moving that forward.
One clarification, February 11th was already, that was scheduled.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's true. We did 4, not 5. Added 4 or added 3. So.
Yeah. 3 were added to the original 6
Yes.
that we added in the fall.
Right. So I guess we added 3 and I'm proposing to take away 2. So we still had 1.
Any other comments, Mr. Millerberg? Then
I
Mr.
would
Wrigley.
much rather wait to see if the trend line continues than make a decision now and not know where the trend line is going. I think by virtue of discussing this now, parents should be knowledgeable that we're considering it, but I just really think we need to at least give it a couple of weeks and watch the trend line.
Mr. Wrigley?
Yeah, I was going to say, I do want to get this done and get it off as soon as possible because of the parents, but I have concern if we tell them no and then the trend goes back again, we get another wave, then we tell them yes, it makes us look sort of crazy because they'll tell their employer no and they go, oh no, the board changed their mind. Now they're telling yes. It might just be easy.
Oh, I have all answers to COVID, Steve.
Well, I know you have. So you can tell me when the next trend line is coming up. But yeah, I think we probably need to wait off to our next meeting just to see if another wave comes through and something happens. Otherwise, we may be telling people something and they have to eat crow.
Any other comments? And you said the March day was March 18th or 20?
It's Friday, March 25th.
So by February 15th, I mean, that's 5-6 weeks notice. I would think most employers would work with employees on that. So.
Okay. That's great.
All right. So if the board's okay, we can bring that particular item back on the 15th with action requested. Okay. Anything else on this topic? No. Thank you, Superintendent. We really appreciate you and the staff here at the district for all they do to keep track. And I'm going to just say, and I think everyone might feel the same way, how much we appreciate how conscientious you are to just track every little detail and make such prudent, I think is a good word. You make prudent decisions because there's no perfect formula out there. And we just appreciate how you've led us through this last 2 years. It's been incredible.
Well, I don't deserve all the credit. I mean, our staff, to pull all this data is not easy and it's pretty laborious, and they're just, school performance, ISD, IT, I send out a text, hey, I need this, and this, and they get right on it and they update our slides, work with communications. I mean, it's a team effort and I'm just the face of it and can present and talk to it. But really, there's so many people that are pulling this data and watching it and making sure that we're on top of it. So I appreciate all of them. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think we all know a whole lot more now about these type of situations than we did even a few months ago. So we appreciate that. Okay, that concludes our items on the agenda for new business. And we will now have staff comments. Superintendent, do you have other things to report? And then Mr. Wilcox.
Just again, thank you to the board and for all of your efforts and our leadership team tonight with workshop. And it's exciting to see that go forward and over the next month or so to see that plan kind of come to fruition. So appreciate everything. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox.
Yes, thank you. Last meeting, you approved our bond resolution to refund some bonds. We just met with the rating agencies and they came back today, in fact, with renewing our AAA aid ratings. One of them said that they rate about 3,500 school districts nationwide, and only 90 of them get a AAA like us. And of those over 20,000 students, there's only about 15 nationwide that have that. So, we feel very proud of that. Unfortunately, if you follow the national economy, the Fed signaled some big rate increases last week. That's going to really impact the savings we get. It's going to, we were looking at quite higher, but it's going to be probably in the 7 million range, which is still substantial. We're excited about that. We was hoping to go a little bit higher as they're looking at raising rates, 2 to 5 times this upcoming year. And with that, also a big thank you, as Dr. Robbins said, for the work session today. Kirsten told me, she'd be a former reporter. Everybody needs an editor, and I felt like that's what I was doing on my team there. But again, I thought that was very, very productive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Neubauer?
Thank you. I wanted to first comment how I enjoyed the USBA conference. Our patron Chad Smith got up and spoke about start times. At that USBA conference, I was able to connect with Washington County School District Superintendent Larry Bergeson. And in Washington County School District, they were able to take that legislative priority to start school, middle school and high school at a later start time, and be very successful with it. And it was really, we had a great invigorating conversation. Their student population is similar to ours. I do hope that is something that comes out of our strategic planning. I wanted to begin my comments with this quote, because as we went through that strategic planning workshop, I thought, my fire is lit. So William Butler Yeats said, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And that's what I feel like we did today. I feel like as we came together and worked with all of our wonderful expert opinions here at the district and as board members, our fire was lit. We're excited and invigorated with this opportunity to make a difference and a positive change that will be very impactful. I wanted to draw attention to something that my community and representatives are really going through right now. And I know many of you received emails, and I have asked permission to share this email with you. And the reason why I want to share this email is because I think there's perspective in here about what we would like our strategic planning to accomplish. So in this email from Mr. Mike Nyman, he talks about in the beginning how appreciative he is of the school board and Canyon School District, how he's watched so closely and feels that we have all done such a tremendous job. He shared with us his shock and sadness at the sudden resignation of Mr. Giddings at Draper Park Middle School. He is the fourth band and orchestra teacher to quit in the last few years. He shared he's extremely concerned about the future, not only of the music program at Draper Park, but also at Corner Canyon. He states he had 4 children go to that school, and he currently has a son in 7th grade who plays the saxophone and the oboe. Now, this is what I wanted to share with you. If you can listen here and indulge me for a minute. He said, much has been said about the importance of core curriculum among the teaching staff. The students have excelled in recent years on standardized tests, for which the school and staff should be very proud of. However, a recent experience from my 20-year-old son, TJ, who was an 8th grader the year the school opened, confirmed to me the importance of the arts in a well-rounded education. I tell this story with his permission. Now, this story is fascinating as he applied for NASA. He graduated from Corner Canyon with a 4.0. He had many AP credits and a 35 on the ACT test, as well as he was Math Sterling Scholar. He was also a 4-year trumpet player of the jazz band and wind symphony. He has long had an interest in space and is studying mechanical and aerospace engineering now at Brigham Young University, while minoring in music and playing in the jazz band. Now, last fall, this TJ applied for several summer internships, one being the NASA Pathways program. There were over 9,000 applicants to the program with only a few dozen hired. He prepared well for his interview, ready to talk about his involvement in math and engineering clubs and his scholastic achievements and the rocketry club at BYU. But to his surprise, the hiring manager was not interested in any of that. He wanted to learn about TJ's involvement in music and how it has shaped his life. Every applicant to the NASA program had the necessary minimum skills, but the hiring manager talked about the importance of creativity and improvisation when it comes to sending people to space. He emphasized the importance of a well-rounded education. TJ was hired in the program and is now working in the propulsion lab in Huntsville, Alabama. Before taking that position, he was also interviewed and had offers extended by both Maag and Northrop Grumman, also in the aerospace technology industry. Interviews with these companies also were more focused on the lessons and creativity he has learned as a musician. The very first question at one of the other interviews was, "Please tell me about that music minor." He states, "I fear that sometimes in our efforts to teach and emphasize core classes, we lose sight of the critical lessons we learn and parts of our brain that are developed by participating in the arts. As demonstrated by TJ's experiences, those out in industry see how critical it is to have this well-rounded education." Then he goes on to ask us to please look at how to better support that. Tonight earlier, there was a success criteria in high quality learning experiences that had been omitted that I put back in with our group in agreement. CSD will create schedules that allow for multiple learning opportunities in every building. I know we have so many learners out there and we want to engage them all. And I feel very, very passionate about engaging them through cross-curriculum, arts integration, and these different topics. And I know that his experience is not unique. I have in my family similar experiences with a music major going into aerospace. So I would just like to leave my comments with that. And thank you so much for your patience as I read that. And I look forward to the strategic planning process to continue.
Thank you. Mr. Wrigley?
Thank you for the opportunity. You know, when COVID started, we were all told it was going to be a sprint. It was going to be over about 2 weeks and we'd be able to get back to our jobs. It extended into the entire rest of the year. Then it extended after that. And now it's going on 3 years. It's become a COVID marathon. I am so proud of our staff. We have some real good marathon runners out there. It's gone on and on and on. And then with this latest wave, I mean, it was bad enough on the first two versions. This latest wave with this huge spike, it was interesting on how we find this fine blue line or whatever line we're walking here, this fine line to be able to keep the schools open because we have parents who want them open. And we also have parents that are very concerned when we do have them open, they don't send the kids there. So how do we keep it safe enough to get the kids not just being absent? And we've been able to walk that line. I'm really proud of our staff. And, you know, everybody's just pitched in. Teachers have pitched in and have not had any prep times, even though the times we've been saying we talk about Fridays off. A lot of that's because the teachers have not had any prep time during the week to get anything done because they're substituting for other teachers in the classes. And we haven't had substitutes. We haven't had any available. Hopefully we've got through this latest thing in this marathon and we'll be able to move forward and who knows what the future may bring in regards to that. But it just, I'm appreciative of our parents. I know parents say, well, we've got it Friday off. I'm going, I know we really don't want you to have Friday off, but our schools are concaving. We got to do something. You know, we got to save the goose that lays the golden egg. And we have to be able to serve your kids. So our patience with our parents, and thank you in that process. We've been really trying to do that. The strategic plan, I was really excited to see this and moving forward with the plan. I've had several parents, most of the time they think of strategic planning as the what and the how. So they keep on saying, okay, well, I'm suspecting this thing. I want to see this project and this project and this project. I keep on telling Betty, this is stage one. We're looking at the why. We're looking at our North Star, trying to figure out where we're going as a district, which will guide our future what's and hows, so that as the board and funding and everything else comes up, we can say, no, this project doesn't meet our why, or this project, whatever. So as we release this, it's not going to answer all your what's and hows. It should have it somewhat embedded within that, all the stuff you've been talking about. But that's the next 2 or 3 processes. We'll actually get into the what is going to happen. And then our district will tell us how it's going to happen. So we're in that process, but have patience with this and that. I think too far for the last 10 years, 11 years I've been on the board. We've been doing a lot of what's and hows without having a real strong why, which means we could have been doing a lot of stuff with a ladder on the wrong roof or the wrong building. So hopefully we're going to get the ladder on the right building. We'll be doing stuff that's in line with that. So I'm grateful to be able to do that. It's a long process, sort of a marathon, sort of like we've been running with COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Oakes?
Thank you. I appreciate everything that's been said. I wanted to point out a document that all of you received this evening that we didn't have a chance to really explain. So these 2 documents, essentially, they come from work that we've done on the Arts Consortium, where we've talked at length about wanting to understand more about student involvement in the arts throughout the district at the secondary level, and also, not just the arts, but other electives. And so, as you're all aware, we had a survey that went out, I think it was the beginning of December. Is that or right before December? And we asked a lot of questions, and it's taken a long time to get the data back. And what you have here represents what we've received for the middle school so far. And it's taken a long time for ISD and Laura Tuesday Heathfield to help us put together this data. And we're still awaiting the data from the high school. But it provides some really great information. And I want to just highlight in particular a couple things. One is a question on the second to last page that asks the question of the students of the importance of electives to them. And I thought that their answer from the perspective of what we've been discussing for the strategic plan is very interesting. When they asked about the arts electives, it says that 73.2% of them said that those are very or somewhat important to them. That's nearly 3/4 of our middle school population said that. As far as other electives, nearly 83% of them said it was very or somewhat important to them, which I think is significant. Those are our students talking. And we had a very, quite a high number of students for, as far as the survey goes, I think it was 60% over the middle schools in general. And of course that varied across middle schools, but that's a very decent amount to give us some excellent data. I also thought it was interesting when we look at what contributed to them not taking arts electives or other elective classes. You'll see it broken out by school, but both Butler and Draper Middle School had over 30% and nearly 30% in a few of the other middle schools. It was because they didn't have enough room in their schedule. So I think it's important data for us to consider moving forward as a board. Obviously, we're talking more about the strategic plan, but I want us to keep those things in mind as we move forward. The second thing is also related to that. I've mentioned from here, not only do I have a love and appreciation for the arts, but I have a very deep appreciation for STEM education. And one of the things I've been looking at for my 2 daughters is making sure that they have more experiences with coding and with computer programming. My older daughter, who's a freshman in high school, didn't really have opportunities for that in middle school. And my other daughter is a 6th grader, and she likewise, in part because of the schedule and other things of what's available at the school, hasn't had those opportunities. So we've been looking at programs like Code to Success, which everyone ought to be aware of. That actually takes place or is hosted at Jordan High School, I believe, and is an incredible program that has been funded by a nonprofit that is trying to close the gap of technology learning, and particularly for kids in middle and high school, and trying to help them to move forward so that more of them can take computer science, AP computer science in high school and really move into tech careers. In doing that, I also came across another program called Women Who Succeed, where girls are assigned female mentors that have done well in STEM fields and trying to help them move along because, and I listened to a podcast from this group, they recognize that there is a large gap in the education system, that they're seeing more and more and more girls that they have some level of exposure, sometimes even in elementary school, but they get to middle school, there's not much. And then they trying to catch their interest in high school is very difficult. And so increasingly, I am seeing more nonprofits that are trying to fill this gap that exists. And I cannot help but feel very strongly that as a school system, we need to do a better job at making sure that those kids are receiving that within our school system. Along with that, in my work on the Point Committee, some of you may be aware that now they're in the stage in looking out at that land where the current prison sits, and that's actually going to be demoed this coming summer, and they're starting to move and make all sorts of changes. They're looking at potential investors and developers that are coming into the area. And I can tell you unequivocally, every single one of them, when it comes to education from our school district, are expecting innovation. And if we don't deliver it, and if we don't represent that or reflect that in our strategic plan, in my mind, we will have failed. It's critically important for what's coming, some of which is very exciting. And we have to be able to adapt to that. And we have to be able to back plan. Where do we want our students when they graduate? And how do we plan for it back, starting from kindergarten? And where are we moving them forward? I want to congratulate, in light of that, Dr. Molly Hart and all of the work that she's done over at Albion. Molly has been a champion of the arts, of making sure that those students are exposed to so many different kinds of things and experiences. And I want to congratulate her on that. She's been absolutely dogmatic about it. And I know it's made a difference. I've talked to people in that community who are incredibly grateful for it. I also received Mike Nyman's email today and was impressed by TJ's experience, but not even remotely surprised. And I'll tell you why. 4 or 5 years ago, when I stood in this boardroom as a parent with my kids, and prior to that, I didn't write an email to the school board that I wish I had written. And the email that I would have written would have explained to you and those who sat on the board at the time, all of the individuals I have known throughout the years as a musician. Personally, I was previously a professional musician, and that's what I studied in college. All of the individuals who went on into professional advanced degrees or professions that are very competitive and very difficult, where every single one of them had experiences, and myself included, where those graduate schools looked at them and said, "Oh, we love music majors." And we'll tell you why, because we know you can work really hard. We know that you can go absolutely micro level and macro level, but you know how to collaborate with people that are different than you and all sorts of different voices. And they went on and on and on. I've lost track of how many of these friends are now surgeons, judges, scientists. They have gone on to do incredible things where those arts that they incorporated in their education were a means to a very powerful end. I didn't write that email. I wish I had. I didn't know whether or not it would make a difference, but in reading through TJ's experience today, it made me think about that. And I think I know that reading and math and all of those things are important. It's critically important that a child knows how to effectively read, but it's also there to be able to help them launch and to help them have a place where they can launch, or explore, and become someone with greater dimension and the ability to problem solve and to face challenges that are coming. It's not just about jumping through the hoop of a test. And so I also am very excited about the strategic planning process that we're in. I see wonderful things that are coming from it. I felt very deeply that it's important that we reflect very strongly and foremost, very much in the forefront, creativity, innovation, critical thinking, problem solving. I'm deeply passionate about those things because I know that's what our kids have to have moving forward for them to be successful. So thank you for everything and on the work that you guys have done. It was really wonderful to be part of that with you today.
Thank you. Mr. Milleberg?
Thank you. Start out with, I would challenge the rest of the board to sign up. Just because it's got a bunch of twos in it doesn't mean you have to do it tomorrow. And I would also invite everybody as they sign up for the 2-2, however many there are in there in your 2-2, that you pay the extra $10 and get your 2-2. And I would challenge you to do that. Our Education Foundation is a great organization. And you look at the things they do, they provide scholarships. They were very much instrumental in the Canyon Connect program to work on getting high-speed internet better for our students, that during remote learning times, they could actually connect and actually transmit papers to the school. It's a great organization, so I would invite you to participate in that. And if anybody's interested, I'll get a 2-2 and I'll run with you, okay? I would probably look like the pig that they've got on the flyer. Tonight, we've heard quite a bit of talk about strategic planning and the whys and the whats and the hows. And I'm sure that my inbox has not been a whole lot different than anybody else's inbox for the last couple of weeks. And it seems like, I don't know how many years ago, we kind of had the issue of how many periods a day should take place at Draper Park Middle. And that was a very, very tumultuous discussion we had at that point in time. And I think as I stop and think about it, I've kind of got the why figured out on that. And the why is because the parents that we've heard from, and admittedly, we've heard from a minority of parents, and I am not inviting more to send me more emails to read, even though I do appreciate them. I don't need 800 emails to me. But the why is to provide more opportunities and a better education for our students. And the what and the how is, they're talking about, right now they've got 6, they're talking about 8, maybe 7's a happy medium in there. I don't know. But I will tell you that from my personal experience, remember what it was like when I was at good old Midvale Junior High School, home of the Trojans. We love that mascot. I had a 4th grade teacher, Howard Johnson. And in 4th grade, this will come to middle school, I promise you, okay? Howard Johnson figured out that KUED, television station from the University of Utah, was broadcasting a couple of times a week. A gentleman, his name was Andrei Anastasian. He was a Russian, and he was teaching Russian over television. And Mr. Johnson latched onto that, and he took his class and another 4th grade class, and we would study Russian for an hour or 2 hours a day. My mother was thrilled because she knew I would save the family from the Ruskies when they invaded. As we moved from 4th grade to 5th grade, Howard Johnson moved to 5th grade to teach. As we moved to 6th grade, Howard went with us. As we moved to Midvale Junior High, Howard went with us. I was very much involved in band. I was one heck of a good drummer. I really was. In all humility, I was good. And so I hit middle school, which was junior high at the time, And I had one period of the day taken up with studying Russian. I had another period of the day taken up with band. I had nowhere to go to take any electives that I wanted to take. As a result of that, if any of you ever watched me with the keyboard, I couldn't even take type in junior high. Those 4 fingers work really well on a keyboard now. The rest of them, they're worthless. And so I can understand not having the opportunities. And I often think that if I had had 10 minutes less in a class period, I don't know how much difference that would have made to me, and been able to select another elective, that my life would have been enriched. I would have been, if nothing else, I would have been able to handle a keyboard. And I don't know what the right answer is there. And I know that some parents are passionate, but a lot of parents probably don't care. But I just would suggest that we take a look at that again, not specifically for Draper Park Middle. But I would suggest we look at that for all of our middle schools. And if best practice is to have more periods in a day, we follow best practice. If best practice is to have 6 periods a day, we have 6 periods. And I've probably talked about all things holy on this one, but at a high school level, if a trimester is better than a semester, we should follow best practice for the entire district and say, this is a better program. So, I look at that and I think, my gosh, rather than just choose up teams and have a war, why don't we find out what best practice is and discuss it and see if we can be more responsive to what would be best for our students. The other one, and honest to goodness, I have Washington County School District on mine, on my notes that I wrote down at the beginning of the meeting. If best practice tells us that we are better off with our teenage kids to have them start later, and somehow Washington County School District has figured out how to make that happen, can we do a field trip and drive 300 miles and go see Washington County and talk about what they had to do and see if that works? Yeah, if you do that in the summer, I'll open the pool, okay? I'll even smoke up a brisket for you, okay? But, I think we need to seriously look at some of these options and be responsive if it is truly best practice. I think as we've looked at things in the past, I don't know how well defined best practice has been, but we've got a few years history on us, and we can see what's happening on a national level and see what kind of difference that's making and make an informed decision. So, President, I would like to have those couple of items on a future agenda that we could discuss and see if we could be responsive. No is a response, okay? I'm not saying we have to do those. I just want to evaluate those and figure out what is best. So I think with that, I'm done.
Thank you. And I've noted your request. So
Thank you.
I know it's late. I just wanted to circle back with Superintendent quickly about on the COVID response. We the district-wide has been in tier 3 with kind of case-by-case evaluation of various activities, and now you're saying that the district-wide is tier 2, with the idea that if numbers change and go up, decisions would then be made at a local school level. Go back to
yes and yes.
Right.
So tier 2 moves us back into a place where we're not restricting activities, right? So instead of approving case by case, those would go forward. And then pending any of those schools meeting that 3-pronged threshold with cases, absenteeism, or not absenteeism, cases to begin with, cases and staff shortage. And then in that window, we would evaluate absenteeism. At that point, we would move that individual school to tier 3, back to the restrictions that we've been under. District wide, I think, we'll just take it day at a time. If we see I just noticed on the news that now there's a stealth variant that's out there. No idea what that means, but it is in Utah. It is in Utah, and it's saying right now indications are it's not as prevalent as Omicron, but who knows, right? So I think we still reserve that. We keep that kind of in our back pocket district wide if necessary. But I think moving back to 2, it would also, I think, just for the public's information, so volunteers would be allowed back in our buildings. We would go back to regular classroom practices and then evaluate case by case with schools to potentially move to tier 3 if necessary.
Great. Thank you very much for that, clarifying that. And I just agree with everything that's been said, and excited about the strategic planning, and look forward to what can come of that in the near and the far distant future for Canyons. So with that, if there's anything else, nothing else. Okay. I will declare the meeting adjourned and wish everyone a great rest of the evening.
That's a pretty sure bet. I think I want to take risks.